what I want to do on this is going to be kind of a mix of a little bit of a presentation to set the context at the beginning on like what external tools and MCPs are and a bit of what's needed for them, just to lay the groundwork. But the goal of this is really a bit of my journey, because for those of you who maybe follow either of my YouTube channels now, my personal one at Havens Consulting, or the one I do with Steve Campbell for our second company, Analytic Endeavors, I've started to dabble in like MCP servers in the last 8 months, inspired by my friend Kurt, who did a lot of stuff with that. That you might have seen Kurt Bueller at Data Goblins. But then I started turning a lot of these functions that I was creating basically to help me in like Claude and ChatGPT, like, oh, these would be really cool tools. And it went from like one tool to multiple tools to now it's kind of just a Swiss Army knife of something like this that has a whole bunch of different things, like a report merger, layout optimizer. And I'll kind of show all these cool little community tools that I've built. But I think, yeah, a lot of today is walking through the journey, a bit of how I got here, but then also even just some of the lessons that I've learned along the way to build something that could be usable by people. And like what can be leveraged in terms of like the vibe coding that got me here, because I wouldn't have been able to build this, in anywhere near the short amount of time that I did if I didn't have LLMs to help me code and script this stuff out, and explain to it like, hey, build me something that does this. No, that's close. Do this instead. So, but the cool part is I'm now getting to build stuff that I've had in my idea repository in my head for years, but didn't want to have to pay a developer necessarily, or also spend 500 hours to learn myself. With those, because I've only ever wanted these as a free tool anyways. But that's kind of the goal and the overall conversational aspect of this today. So what I will say as well is I love questions on this. I've done 170 presentations at this point. I get tired of hearing myself speak in a vacuum. So please ask questions as needed. I'll have the chat up over on the left. I'll have stopping points that I'll pause to, and then we'll have an open discussion at the end. But yeah, feel free to keep it as conversational as possible, especially on things that you think that you might have about, like, why'd you do X instead of Y with some of this stuff. So
quick question for you, Reed. Did you have any background in coding, like C# or anything aside from Power BI, like M or DAX?
I wouldn't have put any of them on my resume as knowing how to code. Like I've done VBA, but only as much as I've needed to for projects. Yeah. I've done C# a little bit, only as much as Tableau Editor is needed to. But I wouldn't if you were to ask, like, do you fundamentally understand the language? Probably not. Like DAX for sure, Power Query, yes, but they're code. Like they are code, but they're not like full code languages, right? Like it's code light. So I had only dabbled in Python, and like I now at this point, I'm sure have 30,000 lines of code easily in Python across all my files. And that was all pretty much vibe coded. I know enough to know how to test for functionality. And it's the reason this is also free, is like, if I was going to ever charge for this stuff, I would probably pay somebody to actually audit the information. But yeah, this is coming from someone with basically zero Python experience prior to this, and that I was still able to build what you saw in front of you in 3 to 4 months of just dabbling in it a few hours a week. So it's pretty cool, the capabilities that I think it's unlocking for personal projects for people in that regard. I'll give a really quick little spiel. So I've been doing this stuff for about 12 years now. Pretty successful YouTube channel and tutorials, live streams. I'll have links at the end to keep this short. But generally, I do a lot of Power BI stuff, some more Fabric things these days. And at this point, run 2 different companies between this one and one other that we do more data platform focus. But let's just get into the meat of it and like talk about some of the stuff that I mentioned. So the thing that I want to set the stage with a little bit is a very brief introduction on external tools and MCP servers, just to, again, set the stage. And these slides that will be available later, I'm rather than reinventing the wheel of my own diagrams, I found some really useful ones to explain it, and I'll have a link to their websites below. But the goal of that, really, with an MCP server is, regardless if you're using Gemini or ChatGPT or Claude, it allows you to be able to more easily ask basic questions, to call upon functions, to do commands against various sources, databases, local files, anything that's that it's going to do some type of complex functionality, but lets you ask to call upon those automatically. In my case, like a lot of stuff that I was doing was with files and stuff like that. But you could also have an MCP that lets you connect to Gmail or GitHub or databases. The thing that's good about this, I would say, is the fact that it basically takes the guessing out of the request. So without an MCP server, I could go to Claude or to any of these LLMs and like, hey, can you please look at this PVIP and can you copy this page and bookmarks in here and duplicate it and make a new one? Like, it can think about it. It can try to analyze the file, but it's guessing. It has to teach itself in real time how to do this. And it'll get some of it right. It'll probably get some stuff wrong. The MCP server, in my case, built a bunch of like Python files that had the scripts ready to go that were refined through iteration until they did it right. And now it doesn't have to think about that anymore. It just does, it says use function based off of the question that I ask, and it does that. So that's the big thing with MCP servers is it can have an automatic handshake to a connection like Gmail or other stuff that could include the API key or other stuff where it automatically connects to it. With local files, it can run verified scripts that will do the job correctly. But the big thing that this reduces is at least a lot of these tools, it's a token system. And there's only so many tokens and lines of code that you can hand it before it starts to overwhelm and it causes problems, hallucinations because it's loading more into memory. If you have a 2,000 line piece of Python code, it can run that without having to load that into the conversation. So you're keeping the how much it has to keep track of in its head at a minimum. So that's the easiest way I can kind of just somewhat simplistically describe an MCP is it's helping aid you by providing more automatic functions and tools in the toolbox. So just to give you an example here, like I can ask a question and it can know based off that question, oh, you probably want to use this function. So my start of my journey to make my tool is I originally was creating a PBIP tools MCP that had things that could, do measure consolidation analysis. It's looking for similar measures and, giving me advice on, hey, maybe you could delete these three, they're identical. Or it can do a layout optimizer that I'll show you in my tool. All of these things, I had functions, but then like, well, that's not very user-friendly. Like I have to go tell them to download an LLM and blah, blah, blah. Like, how do I turn this into a tool? So that's pretty much what I started with in the journey is like, I wanted to save my knowledge of do X action as a function for an MCP, for a LLM. And then that eventually, as we'll get to, evolved into creating an external tool, basically at the end of this. But it's really useful is you can even ask LLMs like, let's just come to like, help me create an MCP server for Power BI on model improvements or PBIPs. This was basically the question that I did. I watched a video of Kurt and I asked to think about this, and then it gave me the step-by-step instructions. So I literally used it to self-teach myself how to make what is needed to make an MCP server. That I used it to ask questions on like, what functions do I need to make? It advised me to write Python, so I used Python. But it's really good at just giving you every instruction along the way. So this was 100% me at a kindergarten level holding my hands, and here's documentation on like, what do you do? So it is, it's quite nice to be able to use tools like this. I'm biased towards Claude. I think it does a better job of coding. It doesn't have the login context across all conversations that ChatGPT does, but I do find that today, at least, it makes less mistakes and hallucinations with the code. And it does a little bit of a better job where it does this. It kind of explains to you like what's happening. And ChatGPT started to do that, but 6 months ago, Claude was the only one that really gave this much context. Whenever you asked a question on like, how did I get to the results? But MCPs are entirely agnostic to that. I will eventually focus more on my external tool, but I just wanted to give you a little understanding and example of like where I started in my journey before I got to building a really cool external tool of just various things to do in Power BI. But my takeaway for you is I would say if you do a lot of development and modeling or report development or anything else, MCPs are a really great way of giving yourself a bunch of like macros to do stuff. So if your job requires you to do a bunch of stuff with files that like Power Query can't do, but you need to like create something that would take them, move them here, rename them to this, do this, like a 5-step process, you could probably build an MCP server that could have a couple of Python files that would eventually let you like have something where you put the files locally, and there is a specific extension, which is really important. What I like about Claude, there's something called file system where it can access your defined directories that you've given permission to locally, and it can read, edit, write, and delete files for you. So you can basically just have fun and come back in 10 minutes and it's written, edited, modified what you've asked it to. This is where one of those things where I want to incorporate a lot of please use my my learnings to hopefully avoid pain points yourself. So it's really good at convincing itself to do a lot of stuff. So I've had a point where I've had like 35 files somewhere, and this was before I started initially doing it, backing it up in Git or anywhere else. And it thought to itself, oh, you know what? I've lost track of what I'm doing. I'm going to delete the entire folder structure, and I'm just going to start from scratch. And then about halfway through, it hit the character limit of the chat message, and I had to start a new chat with zero context of what the previous one was doing because Claude doesn't have that. And as you can imagine, very frustrating. So be careful sometimes of what you do with any LLM like this, and know that if you're going to give it to the keys to a China shop, just be aware that the bowl may occasionally knock stuff down or make edits that you don't want. So my personal recommendation is usually with stuff like this, if I can go in, at least with Claude, there is an option where you can say for writing and editing, always ask permission versus unsupervised. So either backing up the files or doing that. I'm only going to give about 2 takeaways from, again, working with MCPs because I want to focus on the external tool portion of this. But those are the 2 big gotchas that I learned through trial and error. The other really important one is that I started building this, and like scope creep with a project, it's very easy to start having complexity build and build and build. Like models can get complex. Python files and MCP service can get complex too. So if you don't give it an instruction for composition and inheritance, I'm writing this in the message. This was advised to me by Kurt Bueller. So what this will give you, if I have a, yes, like this. So composition and inheritance structure for those maybe, and I'm also explaining this as a kindergartner learning Python, but it will break out tool the items all automatically into sections. So like each tool and each tool's components for the engine and the UI, they'll all get separate files. The issue being is that if you end up with one single giant Python file that is 10,000 lines of code, 2 problems for that. If you ever are wanting to share this with somebody else, it's going to get flagged by every security tool like Kaspersky, Microsoft Defender, because it's easy to hide malicious code in there. The more files and the smaller the blocks of code, the easier it is to get it to be approved for any install company computer that's trying to install something and seeing if there's malicious code in there. And 2, the LLM models will eventually hit a problem where they can't read that much data in a single file. If you ask it to like, oh, I need to make one small change. This UI, can you make it 10 pixels taller? It has to scan 10,000 lines of code to find that. If you have a composition and inheritance structure like this, where it automatically is writing separate files and connecting them together for you as it's scripting it itself, the file maybe only has 300 lines of code for the report merger UI .py file for the Python. So it's a lot less thinking intensive for it to find the right file, and then only scan a small block of code for that. The way to do that with any of the tools is there is you can specifically in projects, you can have project notes where you can just basically give it instructions to mention that. So all of mine will have use composition and inheritance. I'll also kind of mild to yell at it, like never edit files without user confirmation, always edit existing files, never create like things that I've learned that I just started doing stupid stuff. frustratingly. But setting those in here will, again, save you some headache and stuff that I've had to learn incrementally. And I think I learned after I started hitting character limits with a single 8,000 line file. It was hours of painful process to have it keep the file working and break that file up into like 25 files. So if you can do that from the beginning, it will save a huge amount of headache. So again, lesson learned from me, if you're ever at some point wanting to explore this, where it's going to create files for a tool or files for an MCP server, composition and inheritance, hands down, for that structure will go a long ways to save you a lot of headache for that. Okay. Coming back here. Like I said, I wanted to just talk a little bit about some of my learnings there. But the things that this eventually turned into from this is as I started to get this library of functions, like I would love to share this out with the community a little bit. And I'll even show the tool itself and all the cool stuff it does now. But that's kind of where I evolved from an MCP server doing these things, which is more for me, if anything, or very pro developers who could install that from my GitHub. Like, how do I turn this into something that would be an external tool where you could have my tool installed in the ribbon up here? So like that's the thing that I wanted to get to as a final point, is I would love to be able to have a tool for the community for free that would be as part of the external tools ribbon. And there are a few things involved in building that. So basically, for I think the external tools up there, they're generally designed to be Power BI or modeling adjacent things for those who maybe have not used them. Depending on the tool, some of them will auto-connect to the model itself that you have open, or it's just going to open a window for you to do something related to Power BI. It does not have to connect to the model, but it can. The way it does this is there is a folder for Power BI, that has JSON files contained within it. Those JSON files basically have a couple of arguments or paths that are mentioned in here. That will be the name, it will be where your file is located, and arguments if needed to connect to the local database. There's also a, I open back up Power BI. The really tricky part, honestly, was getting the stupid icon to show up. So I had to convert that to base64 code and hard code the giant string of base64 into this, which was another 4 hours to figure that out. But I got to it. But that's pretty much what's required to keep that short and simple. Is there's a JSON file that basically just Power BI reads that folder, puts the icons there, you click it, it opens up the tool on wherever it's installed. So that's the primary component of what's needed for that. So there's not a lot to set one of those up for the most part. You just need to have a JSON file that points to that path for the most part. So the harder part is obviously building the app, but external tools are very useful to basically enhance your development for whatever you might need to do. Now, the overall kind of journey that I went through with building this is summarized here, and I've talked a little bit about that, but Claude initially helped me build out all my functions. Building the app was something that I'll talk about in some consideration, but that was, again, something that I quite literally, as a kindergartner, I just went to Claude and like, hey, I had this MCP server. I'd love to build an external tool. How can I do that? It provided me a series of instructions. It advised me on some community tools to create an executable and patch it up with a bunch of bat files. Like, I entirely self-taught along the way, and honestly, it does a really good job of holding your hand. I'm not going to go through the minute details of that, but I'll at least show the folder that I have that ended up becoming this. So, like everything that builds into it. So if you just gives you an idea of the output. So like it helped me to build a bat file that built all these folders, which it built an executable for me. It even helped me to find, again, some free software that lets you build an installer, which actually will install in your program files, include the JSON that goes into the Power BI folder, which I built. The final thing that I even did as well, just because I wanted to hopefully get as many of you to be able to use this as possible, is we ended up having to pay a few $100s to get a certificate, and it's a little USB stick that does certificate signing and code signing. Technically not required, but if you have a built-in certificate, which shows up here, I want to see if I can show the digital signatures. There we are. So yes, it just helps you punch through any remaining Windows Defenders or other install software. It's a certificate of validation to say like this is not malicious software. So we even went through the extra effort of getting this and self-teaching myself how to like actually code that to attach it to the executable on that. It's those links that I put at the beginning of the meeting, but those have all of this into there to allow for hopefully as few hurdles for people to want to use the tool as possible. But this was all stuff that just very iteratively I like went through on my journey as I was figuring this out and using these LLMs to do so. So and things that honestly, like without those tools would have probably cost easily $3,000 to $6,000 of my own time or somebody else's to go through and to do all that. So the caveat that I'll mention on this, at least before I start to show the tool, a couple of like final takeaways is I would not call this production ready for sales. So this, I would not sell the tool that I have in its current form. I don't plan to anyways, but because you're somewhat blindly developing the software, like you can know if it works, but you don't know how many security loopholes there are potentially, like outside of just asking Claude, hey, is this secure or not? Which I did, and it helped me with that. But there still could be some bugs. The code could be optimized. So I would argue that with MCPs and even building maybe like little mini tools you can use for your job with Python, those are great for building for yourself, maybe for your organization. But I would not put them into the category of probably worthy of actually like making a paid app on the app source or anything like that without hiring somebody who actually knows what they're doing. I've seen enough horror stories of I'm pretty sure apps that have been in like Android and iPhone that people have built probably with vibe coding without a proper auditing review, and then realizing how like what problems there might have been. Or I think there was recently it was like a dog photos app that shared all geolocation data about the photos that users were uploading, which exposed names, pins, locations, and it was of like 1 million users, and it's obviously a huge lawsuit. Things like that because it probably coded that without checking the software because they just had one junior developer using GPT to do all the work. I see. Do we really think that the market is not going to get? Oh, no, 100%. It is going to get. It is already flooded with AI slop software. It is happening. I'm just mentioning to you, like, just in case there's ideas of like, oh, I can make a really cool tool, like, and make $1 million. Like, the extra checks and balances needs to go for that, and hence the reason I'm also keeping this today entirely just free for community and used as is. But yeah, sadly, we are going to get a deluge of AI slop across the board, including in software at some point. But that's a whole other story. All right. Yeah. So what I want to do now is, I think, let me show you the tool a little bit to also go through kind of what it's done. A lot of these were fun to build. Some of these I thought would take 5 hours and probably became 20 as you are up until 11 p.m. working some nights on this stuff. But I want to pause first before I show the tool, just curiously kind of on the journey of like using an LLM to figure out what an MCP is, to building it, to pivoting a bit to external tools. And again, trying to keep it like 15, 35,000 foot, not too technical. Are there any questions that anybody might have on like some of the things that I did, the gotchas, the learnings, before I maybe dive in a bit to like the functionality of the tool that I have as well?
This is Omri. So did I understand right that part of your goal was to learn MCPs? Like you didn't go to Claude and be like, I want to solve this problem of having this tool that can do these cool things. And it was like, you know what, you should use an MCP. It was more like you wanted to explore MCPs and then you wanted it to use the MCPs to deploy your solution.
A bit of both, and so my initial desire to even want to explore those, outside of even what Kurt Bueller has published, like we're pretty close, so we talk on a regular basis on just the stuff that he's found exciting, and he started showing me a lot of these things on functionality of what could be done, and like, I just immediately like, all right, what things I would like to do this. I would love to be able to like, okay, well, I have all these ideas of, man, I wish I had a button to do this thing. Because it's so annoying to have to do it manually. And that's when I jumped into like, okay, like MCPs seem to do that after I briefly got a demonstration of how the functions work from an output perspective. That's why I went and self-taught myself that, because he said it was fairly easy, and then I just went ham on exploring it myself and basically using it to teach myself about it in a kind of a cyclical reference. So that was where the motivation first came from, is just seeing how easy it was for him to build that. And then I immediately just started writing down, like, all right, what are all these cool ideas that I would love to be able to do that have annoyed me for years about using Power BI that has never had a button to do those before, if that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it'll continue to evolve. I'm sure at some point there's going to be another 7 or 8 things that are going to be in here, and further enhancements. So as well, it is one reason that I went through the process of even, I think better learning how to create a proper Git repository with releases and everything else. I'm usually a user submitting feedback, not actually creating the repository. But even all of this, I helped Claude to, like, what should go in the README? What should do all this? So it helped me even build this to properly structure this in a way that would be community friendly, so people can submit issues and, et cetera, et cetera. All right, so yeah, the things that I've built out on this were a few. And again, a lot of these have come from client scenarios. So this first one that we have in front of us, and again, like, this is entirely just built in Python, but it's packaged in an executable now. But yeah, the report merger came from a client that kept wanting to move pages between reports. Hopefully all of you are leveraging shared models. So you have shared models, thin reports. To hub and spoke scenario, have multiple thin reports all connected or composited against a master model. Well, the client that I have continuously were like, all right, well, okay, I want it on this report. No. That page 2 actually goes in this one instead. The problem occurring with this, and the fact that often they would want, like, special pop-ups or other stuff. So they have bookmarks and many other issues with that. So I got annoyed on having to constantly move local measures and bookmarks between reports, it's death by 1,000 cuts, as I describe it. It's time consuming, but not complicated. So it's very boring work to do and repetitive. So this came out of the fact that I would like basically just report A, report B, and I'll show you the design of this, and it will, like, let you merge basically create a new PBIP file with the measures from both, the local measures from both, and all bookmarks from both working on all the pages. So if there's 3 pages in each, you'll end up with a new PBIP with 6. If there was 2 measures in one, 3 measures in another that were locally scripted measures, you now have 5 in the new one. It will not work with the composite modeling. That's 100x the complexity of having to figure out how to merge local queries and new tables and relationships. These are purely just thin reports when you have 2 PBIPs that do that. I did attempt briefly to make this compatible with PBXs, but again, 50 times harder for any script to extract and unzip a PBIX file versus a structured PBIP architecture. So I am just entirely avoiding that, especially considering that, like, sometime in the near future, PBIPs will be coming out of GA, sometime even further in the future. At some point, PBIXs are only going to be legacy. So I'd rather build forward than to spend 50 hours trying to figure out how to do all these things with the PBIX. So it is one requirement today for any of these tools that I built, is it does require PBIP structure. But granted, if you really wanted to, you could save it as PBIP, do this, and then just open the PBIP, and you can save it and convert it back to a PBIX. So it's a couple of steps, but you could still technically use this and then put it back to a PBIX form. But I'd just like to mention that, at least, of why I chose not to do that. So I have a whole bunch of test PBIPs. But, like, yeah, the merger, I'll do report 1. You just push, basically, you can either copy, paste, or browse, but, like, file folder from that one, file folder from this, second report, do analyze. It's pretty cool too. It's like, again, there's so many little things that as I built this out, like, ooh, well, if there's two themes, give me the list of both themes and tell me which to do. This will actually update the new file, and it will get rid of the old theme and then update all the pages, not just the pages from the report it's inherited from, but report B, it will apply this theme to all the pages in the new one. And you even get a nice little summary where it gives you a log and it shows you, there you go, 6 pages, 4 bookmarks, 2 measures. 2 pages, 0 bookmarks, 2 measures. So all of these will get created into a brand new PBIP structure where it merges everything together. Again, coming from an annoying moving target amount of pages where I think after the 7th time I had to move a page, like, all right, I'm going to spend 20 hours to build a tool to do this, that save myself future hours. I think there's a joke. A true coder is someone who will spend 10 hours to save themselves a 10-minute task or something like that. But
Yeah. Can I ask you another question? Just because you've done so many different things. Like, if you, in that scenario, if you put like 15, all the tabs in the report, and then you just saved it in all the places and hid the things, right? But does that not work because the navigation would be too subtle? Like, I was just thinking maybe you could overbuild it and just hide the stuff that they didn't want to see in the other. No, it doesn't work.
Well, the problem is like so page 2 that they want to move to report B, that has 17 something other pages that aren't in report 1. It has to be integrated with all these other separate pages and other stuff. So like they're 2 separate reports that just happen to be connected to the same model.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, like execute merge, and even it'll pop up like my report will have blah blah blah. Say, I think that should be fine. The only error I occasionally get, you notice that this path is pretty long. If the file path string in Explorer gets too long, then it errors. So I usually stick it on desktop. But there's a maximum character limit that Windows has. So let's see if it writes this. There you go. Cool. Yep. But the big thing that I wanted to do on this is the first time I asked it to build this tool, I didn't even ask for a log. It just thought that, oh, that would probably be useful. So it automatically put a version of this in here, and then I enhanced it by saying if there was things missing. But I'm continuously amazed at when I just ask it a very basic thing. Sometimes it sprinkles in extra stuff that it thinks would be helpful. Most of the time it's cool. Sometimes it's annoyed me because I didn't ask you to do this. Don't do that. But I very much appreciated that it automatically chose to give me an output log as it works through, so I have transparency on like what's being done. But to give you here we go. Give you an example of this. Merge. Yep. Yeah. So the PBIP for the first and second ones are there. It created this and this. It created an entire PBIP structure of all the files, everything, and it merged all the appropriate stuff. Like, I find that just so impressive that it's able to do all that. And fingers crossed for Murphy's Law, because this is the same file that I've been using for months to test. But I should be able to open this up. We should see all the pages. There will be multiple local measures that are in there that are in my metrics folder that were created. I love that it's able to do all that. Oh, see why? So oh, here we go. Yes. So this is the bug that I was talking about. This has nothing to do with the merge. I have a custom visual in here that the string for the file path becomes too long. If I take this and I stick it on desktop, it's going to open. Yeah, it has nothing to do with the actual merge. It's just the file path is too long for all this. So I go here, I put this on my desktop. It'll open now. Yeah, it's the 256 or something like that. I forget the exact number, but there is a string limit for file path length. Here we go. This is better. And I'm not going to goes into too much technical that show you like the original files, but I'll just point out like what got merged when we did this. And oh, that's right. I need to. Do I want to bother? It's because I need to connect to the right tenant for this. Where are we? Delete. Power BI. Is it good? And back to the idea of like, hey, Vue 2 and being buggy. Like, I should have gotten a splash screen to do something, and like it's just stuck.
See, the demo gods are both against us, Reed.
Yeah.
It's the net week.
Yeah. I'll just show you the structure to go into here then. Let's do this.
Question for you. Do you find it hard to debug using like Claude AI, or is that something you just kind of got used to? Like, oh, you've been doing these cycles.
So if you are not using composition and inheritance, yes. So that's where the it's very hard to debug if there's too much code. So 8,000 lines, it gets lost trying to fix it. It makes an edit. It gets lost on its place and doing those. Now, if you have the file structure that's going to be like this, come on. taking a minute to think. Whew. That's one downside of using the studio voice on NVIDIA is it'll occasionally spike my CPU. But when you have a structure that's more like this, where like my tools, they all have separate folders. So I can say like, hey, in this folder, I'm having an issue with my column width tool. It only has this many files to now scan of the like 45. So this really, really helps to debug. And if you ask it, hey, please review, analyze, report back to me what you think the problem is and suggestions for a change. And then like, okay, I suggest X. Would you like me to execute 1, 2, or 3? And then you tell it, okay, please proceed with step 3. We'll go edit the file, make the changes, and do that. So it became significantly easier once I started to segment this up. I'm just going to briefly do this. So Power BI. Which one's which? I think it's this one. Fingers crossed that it's this one. If not, I'll just work off my other files. One downside, having so many demos open, ready to go. Yeah, I'll just quickly exit. 2 more. 2. And that one. There we go. Okay, so let's go to new one. Open it up here. And do a quick login. There we go. Done, done. And let's get the right tenant. Go ahead. Oh. Yeah, so this is the little pop-up issue that I get, which is really annoying. Stop it. Stop. There you go. Okay, please. It will continue to even like pop up the same splash screen. Like, no, I'm trying to log into a different tenant. There we go. And quickly get my login to this. Done. Copy password. Doop. That should be golden. Good. Sweet. Okay, now this will open. There it is. Okay. Did do the this is right. 1 sec. Here we go. I'm almost there. Password. This is a live model, so it needs to be connected to the right tenant to actually access the model. So it's my analytic endeavors one. Okay. Third time is a charm. If it doesn't get it on this one, then I'll just go to the second tool. I would like to at least show the output of the merge. And Bob's your uncle? Maybe?
Come on, you can do it.
It's not popping up the thing this time. There we
Hey!
go. All right. Yeah. So, yeah, essentially, like, I had 3 pages and 4 pages in each. So, like, notice that, like, as an example, I have 2 company infos. Both files had a company info page. So it duplicated it from both because each one I thought for a brief moment of maybe giving it options and picking pages, but that became a little bit more complicated. I found it's very, very easy to want a million features in any one of these tools. Like, ooh, but could I do this? And I realized I've just spent 90 minutes that I haven't even added this feature yet. And I have like 3 others. I've had many black holes of I'm up at like 1 a.m. trying to do this stuff. I will say to a degree, not since Power BI desktop first came out, have I ever like wanted to stay up to keep working, to play around with a toy that was so much fun to build. This is, I've scope creeped myself many times on like keeping to add features to this. So this completely bulk, no additional options or UIs. There is no select measures, select anything. It just merges everything without any option, and you can manually go in and delete anything you don't want to. But it merged all the pages together, all the bookmarks. Chart visibility was in one, filter was in another. Those are inherited. I had local measures that were here that moved over. I also had a special measure on my fact table that was moved over. So it will, for anything that was built in the report, basically, or that can be added to the model, as long as it's a live connection, all got combined together. So I think that for the few times that, as people grow, especially in enterprise environments, I'm hoping that that's going to be a useful tool, because I can see a lot of scenarios where you need to reconfigure what report goes where. And the annoying part is, again, like there's a couple caveats. Like you can technically, and then this is why I'm like mentioning why I think this is useful. Again, there's the theme that I had as well, but you can Control C and like go to a new report, paste this in. If you have no page filters, if you have no extra bookmarks, if you have no extra measures, yes, you could technically copy a page between reports like that. But as soon as you have a page level filter, not going to work. As soon as you had a measure that was needed on that page locally, that won't work, or a bookmark. So this is for those scenarios. If you ever need this at some point, when you want to smash two thin reports together to make a new one, in some capacity, this is basically a one button tool to do that for you. But yeah, that was the like kind of problem thing that I had. One. Now, number two, this was one that was such a labor of love of all of them, is the layout optimizer. And I'll show you before and after of this layout cleanup. So what I find annoying, and you might agree with me, is you have different layouts that you can build for a model in the layout window. Now, usually it's great to create additional ones if you want to show like the sales pipeline process, or like a few subtables. Come on, there you go. But let's take a second to load the layout. There you go. The default one is horrible, as you can imagine from this. Even the auto layout's bad. Like if you go to here, auto layout, I don't know what logic they're using for this, but it's still crap. This is not readable by any capacity. The one thing I think it does, which is kind of cool, is it puts isolated tables over here. But otherwise, like I can't get rhyme or reason from this at all. Like it's horrible. So I built something that automatically layouts this into what I refer to as like the middle out layout design, I guess. Like that's what it self-named itself as I was building it. So I went through a lot of love to get this, which my encouragement too is please feel free to download this, test some of this stuff. If you ever have any like bugs, report back. But I think it's doing this pretty well now. So give yourself a reminder of what this looked like beforehand. And I'm going to show you with a click of a button what it organized that into. And not only does it put it in a good structure, what I like is kind of a nice icing on the cake is the fact that it makes them pixel perfect in size and distance and spacing. So little drum roll of the layout that it cleans up. That's the final output. Like it's like chef's kiss organized.
Wow.
I prefer my
what a difference.
I prefer my facts in the middle and then snowflake schema outwards. It was so difficult for me to teach it to how to identify like, oh, that is connected to this is connected to a fact, so therefore that's level 2, that's level 3. So I taught it to it basically like it's arbitrarily putting it to the left and right. There's no logic to say which is what, but it goes out upwards of 3 levels. Anything that's 3 levels further away from a fact will just be automatically put into level 3. This is a real client model that I had that has obfuscated the data, and I've changed all the names and the data inside of it. So these are the tables and the relationships that model had, but I also used Claude to like, can you rename everything and also get rid of the actual data and stick a bunch of dummy data in there, but keep the structure. But I mean, you can follow the relationships a lot easier. Like it is so much easier to understand that. And I made sure to, sorry, 4 levels out, but yeah, any disconnected tables, they all go over here. It automatically creates a grid for all of my disconnected parameters. If there was a metrics table that I had, it would stick it here in between them. So it will separate and group in this little pattern that I basically built out. This took me probably 12, 14 hours worth of prompting back and forth, and it would keep randomly like putting the XYZ positions in weird spots. But I've tested it on like 9 models now, and it pretty much follows the structure to nearly a T. And the other really big one is notice how most of these relationships go directly across. I had to teach it stacking order between the stacks that I built, specifically because I wanted as little overlap from the columns. Because if you just randomize these, you would get a lot more crisscross where they're going up and down and zigzagging across each other. So I even taught it to try to make as much of a direct lineage. Basically it does math, and it does a calculation where it computes the overall score of all of these, and it tries to find the best score where there's the least overlap in the Python logic. And I think it did a really good job, but it's, if you're given a file for somebody like this where you need to clean this up, like being able to organize your alt tables default perspective, because there's no button to say auto optimize or anything. You'd have to do it yourself, drag and drop 1,000 times. This hopefully can save a ton of time. Maybe it's not perfect. Maybe 1 or 2 tables isn't in the wrong spot, but okay, cool. I only have 2 tables left where like, nope, put that there and put this here. So it really can hopefully save some of you or anybody who uses quite a bit of time to like organize this a bit. But this was my favorite one to build. I was up many late nights getting it done, but it, I think, goes a long way of just cleaning up the layout. And it is funny that I built something that organizes it better than the built-in one that's in Power BI, which I don't even think there's any organization. There's got to be. I'm sure there's logic in this. I cannot see any logic personally on how this is built. Like there's a fact table up here at the top, but also in the middle. Like, yeah, I think there's very little effort went into making this, probably, is my guess. But yeah, like that was my favorite one of step 2. I wanted to show you, by the way, the output at least, so you can see what the analyze section like this looks. So I'm going to go back to my server, my tool, my test PBIPs. This is layout. No, oh, that's right. This one, I've been lazy. Like technically, you don't select the PBIP file; you just select the folder that it's in. So I think it should be. Yep, there we go. Analyze. Yep. So it even categorized it. Table categorization. I identified that you have 18 fact tables, 21 L1 dimensions, L2, because that's these columns. This is an L1. This is an L2, this is an L3. So it actually breaks it down, the calendar table. So it categorizes them because that's how it knows where to place it based off of attributes that I have of it as I was doing all this. But it's nice that it gives you a little summarization of what it thinks it's going to be doing. For some reason, it chose to include a quality score at the beginning, but it gives you at least a nice preview of what it will be doing before that. But like that was the second thing that I built that I think can be very useful for a lot of people to clean up their model a little bit. I'll go over to report cleanup, but do a brief pause as I take a drink. If anybody had a question, thought, curiosity about like some of the design or choices that I had for building this out the way that I did.
I think it's great. It's no surprise, given the other stuff I've seen you do about the visualizations, how you're very tuned to the precision of the layout. I think it's marvelous, actually.
It's kind of like, I mean, the thing that I get, like I have mild OCD, and like having it actually be pixel perfect size where because before optimization, if you have a table like this, it will automatically actually reduce it to the right size. It makes them all perfect squares, and then it gives them all perfect spacing. So it will organize better than you ever actually could with your mouse, because there's no way for you to say, I'm pretty sure if you select a table, there's no there's no X, Y, and Z here. Like a report visual does, but this has no option. You have to use your mouse. So there's an extra level of just, I don't know, and like mental satisfaction for me knowing that it is the like precision pixel perfect layout design that comes with that. That would be painfully hard to get by moving them yourself with your mouse and cursor. Let's see, report cleanup. So I'll just analyze this one first to show.
You saw Lee has his hand up?
Oh, I didn't. Yes, let me, Lee, if you want to come off mute, please feel free and ask a question.
Yeah, sure. No worries. Thanks, Reed. I guess, sorry if I'm making you repeat yourself or anything here, but I'm hoping you could kind of reiterate the role that the MCP server was playing, like in the development of this, or like actually does it leave an artifact in the actual deployed tool itself, or is it kind of strictly helping you like finalize that code because it has the understanding through the external tool. Am I understanding that right?
Yeah. So like this started out as a function. So right here, the same Python code that the same design that you see as the output is what this function does. So if I was to like normally with like an MCP is I could copy path. I have a file here. Could you run the middle out layout optimization, blah, blah, blah. And it would basically read the file, run the function, it knows the library that it has, and it would like, okay, I've successfully done this. And it would basically give me the same little output inside of Claude of this thing. It would, I would have this, but printed in a Claude chat. And at some point, I had enough of these, like, well, this would be really cool to share to people. But man, having someone have to install an MCP server and go through like using Claude and all this other stuff seems like I will have a very small amount of people who could use this. But if I could have a tool that could just pop up to do this inside of Power BI or as like a Windows tool, that's where I decided to pivot into this, because I realized that a basic UI for this would make it a lot more approachable to non-technical people to start doing this. So that's how it evolved from A to B, is realizing I needed a UI for some of this stuff. If
Okay,
that's answering the question.
Absolutely makes sense that it's like an evolution. Okay, yeah, that totally helps. And I was just browsing through the repo that you posted to try to kind of understand like what if like there was some component of like a deployed MCP, but it doesn't seem like that's the case. It seems like it's more of you took your learnings from that to create this tool.
Exactly. Like, and there's a lot of overlap for them. Pretty much like the only difference between like a tool and an MCP is there's a UI on top of the other one, but they're both essentially, like in this case, calling the same libraries and then the same scripted logic. But yeah, for this layout one, there is a it's a very basic layout file that is in. It only edits one thing.
And I will just say, great work. I mean, this is a really fantastic tool and really well done.
Thank you. Welcome. It's buried somewhere in here, but there is a .layout file, JSON.layout. Like it literally just has the name of every table, and it's just the X, Y, and Z coordinate. It's a very small file. So this makes like it only edits a few hundred, like maybe 100 lines of code or something like that. But figuring out where to put it that's where the big brain has to think. But the actual edit for this one is super simple. The merge one is much more complicated in terms of what it actually has to build and like copy and paste and append and make file edits. Yeah, this one is super simple in terms of what it codes outwards. But it's logic to identify and all that. That's where the thought came into this. But yeah, the other one that I had is coming from a pain point scenario, again, of things that I've learned and seen over the years on things to clean up. So it can scan a file and report on 4 primary items: unused themes, unused custom visuals, unused bookmarks, and for an icing, because I didn't know where else to put it at the moment. My number one pain point in Power BI that I think every report should have, and that is I hate having to do, is if you use the filter pane, every visual level filter should be hidden. Because if you click a visual, it pops up, it pushes all your page or report. It's a stupid bug that nobody who is a report consumer should ever have to be filtering by the show. Like, if you have the country on all pages, these are user filters, yeah? And you click a visual, this should not show up. These are annoying like pop-ups that you get that pushes the useful filters down. And if you have a matrix table, well, like you get all these extra ones show up. But to hide these, you have to click every visual and you have to click. Imagine doing that in an enterprise report with like 20 pages and 60, 70 visuals. That is 500 clicks that you might have to do to hide everything on every visual on every page. It is horribly slow and painful. I hate it. So that is one thing where it will identify any filters that are not hidden. There's 18 left that I missed. So this will automatically scan, identify, and then just add into the report layer. There's like a little line of code on every visual where it's filter, hidden is true or false, and it will hide all those for you. So that is, I've wanted to build this for like 6 years, and no other tool has done it. So like that was one of my like biggest happy birthday to me moments when I could finally build that. But on top of it being slow and tedious, it's so easy to miss one. especially when you're trying to click through as fast as possible and click to the next visual and click through and your eyes are falling out of your head because you've been staring at your screen doing this for 20 minutes. It is easy to skip one and maybe not necessarily notice it, especially on a matrix table as you're scrolling. This kind of ensures 100% you're not going to screw anything up when you do that. The other ones, I would say, are intuitive and not intuitive. So unused bookmarks, without digressing too much, it will basically detect that if it's being used in a button at all or not. It will put that into the, there should be somewhere in here, unlikely category. Yeah, so here we go. Page missing. Yeah, found. It will analyze, and if it's missing, it will say guaranteed not used because the page is deleted. Because every bookmark has a page ID. And if the page is gone that the bookmark was created off of, it's guaranteed not to use. It will otherwise recommend that, yeah, likely unused if there's no buttons or navigators attached to it. Technically, someone might be using it in the bookmark pane in the service. Like it could still technically be activated. So that's why it says likely unused. But the really important one is legacy Power BI reports. I didn't notice this until I started using PBIPs, but I have files that I've used as demos now for like 8 or 9 years. They've iterated. I've just saved over them and I've edited them, and I have very old files that have been used a long time. And I used to import PBI Viz files before we had the app source store years back. Microsoft, the only way to add a custom visual is you had to add the physical file into it, and from there it would delete. I thought when you deleted the report. However, I found that in some of these unused ones, go to report. None of these stupid visuals are in. I did open so I'll open up the report page, but none of them are shown in the visual pane. There were some app source added visuals, but all of these are entirely obfuscated and hidden. They're still in the file. They're taking up space. All the resources and stuff are still there from them, but they're basically hidden junk that's in the folder. I also was getting those string errors when the path was too long because of these stupidly long strings. So it will find and delete those. So basically, it does a nice little quick cleanup of your report, getting rid of unused stuff. Build pane visuals added from app stores, hidden source visuals in the file, bookmarks that are unused, groups that are also isolated if you have a bookmark group not used, and then hiding visual level filters. So this one is a multi-tool inside of a multi-tool, I guess, but it allows you to choose which one of these you would like to do on your report. But again, it's time saver and kind of a way to help you identify just junky stuff that's sitting around in a file that you might have. But yeah, the biggest one that I think is going to be super useful for people is an auto visual level filter hide, especially if you use the filters pane. I want to be mindful of time and not go too far into this because I can spend a lot of hours geeking out on this stuff. But that's that one in summary. I'll do one more, and then maybe I'll do the last two and then open it up for questions. Another one that I find tedious, table column widths. Annoyingly, on a table, the only way to resize these is doing this. There is no, oh, let me go to the filter, the format pane. Like there's no option to do pixel perfect. And I don't know about you, but back from my Excel reporting days, you'd multi-select the columns, you'd right-click, you could set the column width. You could make a pixel perfect table in a pivot table with evenly spaced columns or whatever. You had a lot more control over all that, right? Power BI, you have to go through literally with your cursor one at a time. So this tool identifies all of that. So if I was to, I'll just scan to show you the stuff on the screen, like go to column width. And as that's scanning, I want to show you so basically it identifies the tables. It even tells you the type. So is it a table? Is it compact matrix, outline, or tabular, like the format designs, and whether or not it's going to be indented, multiple columns. And it gives you an option to then configure these, like what's the spacing, how you want to space it. So custom, fit to header, fit to totals. It'll even give you a preview to tell you like plus or minus how much space you're adding or subtracting pixel wise from all this stuff. And keep it short. Basically, I can do it universally where it goes through and applies intelligent logic to everything. Or you could double click on any one of these and set a custom thing for that particular visual. But I like this because it can be a really easy, like one click or maybe a couple of clicks option to auto organize a very wide table with a lot of measures and other stuff. And it goes through it. It does it on all of those. So I rather like this one. I can briefly just show like a before and after. So layout, column width, and save a bit of memory space. So that's this one. And then I'll do the after cleanup. I'll let these both load. I know I'm a little over, but wanted to spend a bit of time on like actually talking about some of this stuff.
You've got the time.
Cool.
This is super interesting.
I mean, it was so fun to build out a lot of this stuff because again, like there is no greater motivator of a tool than a pain point that was already present for the developer. Tabular Editor was built by Daniel because he needed a better tool than Visual Studio, like old Visual Studio, to build tabular models. DAX Studio was built by Darren because he didn't have a good way of doing performance analysis on measures. The best tools are always built by the people experiencing pain problems with those.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this was before. I just bunch of tables that are like, I made this column super narrow. I made this super wide. I made this compact matrix, like clearly not enough room to allow for all the hierarchies in here. I had a couple others in this. So this is what it started with, and then it ended up very nicely to organize it and auto-formatting the tables. And I'm sure there's going to be some times where it's not going to be perfect, but like if this gets you 80% of how you would like it, and like, you know what, maybe I want a little bit narrower. Cool, you can make an adjustment. The last thing that it will do, it turns off auto size, because that's important. Otherwise, it's going to snap back to default or something, right? And mess up what you've done. So it will automatically turn off auto size. I personally can't imagine a scenario where you would want to update the width of all this stuff and then have Power BI automatically put it back to something else. So there's no toggle to say do that or not. It's just automatically will apply that as a result. But yeah, the big thing that I had to teach it is a regular table. There's a matrix outline that has separate columns, has a separate consideration. I had to tell it, hey, if there's identify how many levels of the hierarchy there are, because the deeper it goes, the wider your single column in a compact form needs to be, because it has to account for the indents. I haven't gotten as far as maybe having it review what your indent spacing is. There's only kind of one master setting, but again, that's only one column you have to adjust. The more important one, I think, is probably your measure columns. I made that try to account for the width of the total. So when you fit to measure, it tries to add extra space specifically to like account for likely a wider grand total at the bottom. But it does a pretty good job between at least like the examples that I tried to build out to make the tables a bit better formatted. And that OCD in me is very happy that M1, 2, 3 are all pixel perfect same width. There is no like they're close to each other, because I'm sure some of you have probably at some point tried to like approximately make all of your columns the same width, and it's tedious to do that. And you're trying to like line everything up. So
there's no shift, right? Like in Excel, you can hold shift and it'll
do
that.
Really annoying, yeah.
That was one thing I wish I was like, why can't we bring that?
Or just can I select this? Yeah. Can I select this, and can you not have a drop down where it's a list of columns and the pixels next to it? Just have that built into the somewhere in here, like InfoRiver and other custom visuals have that. Like there is a manage column section, and you can do it has fit to header, fit to measure, fit to total, best fit, manual fit, and like it's super easy to make those changes in external tools or custom visuals. But like, yeah, this solves a giant pain point that I've had for that. Most of these are all like headache solvers. The cool thing that
find those headaches and build a tool, right? And
yeah, exactly.
Start getting more comfortable using it.
I think I actually need to have it fix this little. Looks like the window at the bottom when it pops. Small things with the UI, like it starts to cover the button, so that'll be a note for me for later to fix. But yeah, I didn't actually ask for the pop-up. But I said I want to be able to edit tables individually. It determined, the best way to do that would be to have a separate menu like this. So this pop-up is all just it did that on its own based on I need a way to edit tables individually. And then it told me, oh yeah, if you double click on this, which was not obvious, I had no idea, like, you just added a feature. Where the heck is it? Oh, you double click. So they're like, well, you need to make a prompt, put this in the corner, because I had zero idea that doing this would do that. So like it's like teaching a toddler, a very smart autistic toddler. Well, because it like they're really good at stuff, but there's a lot of context that sometimes gets missed with certain things. So but yeah, I'm continuously impressed on how much it can figure out on recommendations of I'm going to, and 80% of the time, again, it's cool. Sometimes like I have to slap it on the wrist, like you've tried too much. Like I asked you to do one thing, don't do 5 things. But many of these extra things that came into this, like the preview, I never asked for a preview and it just built it in. But I really like the fact that it actually tells you a summary of do's and don'ts, or a summary of like the plus and minuses of your change, what it will do when you format this, which is really cool. And even like a little hierarchy where you can collapse your tables, your pages, so many cool stuff in the UI. Okay, last but not least, similar thing that I wanted to paint problem that I have. So I'll paint the picture of the issue. I had a report page with, let's say, 6 bookmarks that were doing all these different things with the visuals on the page, like popping up this and that. And like they wanted, all right, I want that page. I want another copy of it, but I want one change. I want this to be called like, slightly different. And that visual 3, make it this instead, but a duplicate page of that. Okay, well now I have to I can duplicate the page, but bookmarks don't come with it. So I have to now go and make all 6 of those bookmarks again, which is still annoying. This will duplicate the page and the bookmarks. So you'll get a brand new page with the bookmarks attached to the new one. So I call it advanced page copy, because normally you only duplicate a page, bookmarks stay with the first one. So if I have a report with a page with 3 bookmarks, my report will end up with a new page with another 3 bookmarks connected to that. And I think it names it to like copy, or it puts like, I think parentheses 1 or something like that, because it gives it a unique name, but it will double and copy the bookmarks along with it, which is really interesting. Now, the thing that I want to show here, let's see if I can, I think there's a bug technically in it that I think might turn into a feature for a future tool, but I want to show the output. Page copy. Oh, no, I wanted to open it. I realized that's just browsing. So let's go to PBFP, page copy, after copy. Here we go. So there was an interesting little glitch that I noticed when I did this. Like, oh, this actually could be useful. I don't think people use bookmark pop-out panes as much anymore. Like, I still build them sometimes, but they have a lot of technical debt. So I try to avoid them. But I potentially see a future use for this with an interesting, again, like feature that came with this after the page duplication. So this page copy is after I've copied it. So here's my original page. The report copy is the page. This does let you pick the page to copy. 1 or more. It actually gives you that in the UI, but in the, see, so like I have all of this. So my first page had filters and visibility, and then it copied the page and copied all the bookmarks related to it. So I have a total of 4 bookmarks, 2 groups. I even had to spend time like, well, if they're in groups, please make sure to copy the group too. I want a perfectly identical structure. The thing that I find interesting, let's see if I can do this here. So I'm on my report page, my visibility toggle, it works here. And let me, well, it was working the other day. Maybe I get fixed. So previously, on this page, I would toggle the visual on this one too. Well, either way, like at least now it is actually apparently working as expected. So the bug went away. I noticed that the bookmarks technically worked on both pages. So there was something that it would, you could have in theory 1 master bookmark. You could copy a page 17 times, or like a bookmark pane, like a special like slicer navigator pane that you had as a pop-up. You could have a single set of 2 bookmarks to show and hide that could in theory work across all 20 pages of your report instead of like 1 per page. But yeah, for some reason it's not doing that now. But I noticed that as a glitch, like, oh, my bookmark works on both pages. That was what I was going to show. But yeah, doesn't seem to actually be doing it now. But it is working as intended otherwise, where you get the bulk set of the advanced page copy that comes with them. Because I got tired of situations where I would have to duplicate a page to a degree with a small variation, including the bookmarks, that I would have to go through the process of creating all the bookmarks again, configuring them, et cetera, et cetera. So this was again a nice solution to a pain point that I had with those. It would be lovely if you could just do this in Power BI where you duplicate a page and it duplicates the set of bookmarks to go with it, but it's not a feature that's natively available to Power BI. So that's what this tool was copying. And here's, as you can see, the UI adjusts and it shows you the pages with bookmarks to copy. It'll only show you applicable pages, and then you could select one or more pages to copy from here before executing. But yeah, it's a 5. I think I have 5 at the moment. As you can tell from the tabs, I built this interface in a way to continuously allow more of them. I continue to look for community feedback at each of these, but I'm really just trying to build a Swiss Army knife of like solutions to annoying things that Power BI can't do when it comes to modeling with a lot of this stuff. I have my sunset lights that change color around this time. That's why I got a lot more orange in my room. But yeah, like you feel free to ask any questions on like any of the things that I have here. I can also drop some links again to both. If you missed it earlier, this is the site where I kind of have it on my actual business page. And if you're wanting to care more about the technical stuff, that's going to be the Git repo. What I'll do is I answer questions, though, as I always like to provide a raffle. So let me go to my slide.
Before you raffle, Reed, I would love for everybody to come off mute, turn their video on, and let's give Reed a round of applause for just the amazing work he's done and opened up to us for free to smash through all these annoyances that I know power users have in Power BI. Like, seriously, hats off, man.
Well, thank you.